Hello, Formula One fans, and welcome back to F1 in Focus. We are the only Formula One podcast where a Dutchie and Englishman can very much get along in the wonderful world of Formula One. Today, we'll be discussing post-Canada Grand Prix, what happened, what are the best quotes, who's the driver of today, and of course, we are going to introduce something new, but we'll talk about that more in depth on next week's show when we have the pre-Austria show. My name is John and I'll be your host today. And joining me is, of course, the man with the best hair in the business. It's none other than James Hazel.
How are you doing?
Hello, my friend. How you doing?
I'm all right, thanks, yeah.
That's good to hear. Looking sharp. New camera
Thank you
angle
very
and all?
much. No, I've just remembered to set the camera up right.
Don't always take credit when someone gives you credit, mate.
Yeah, I should do really, but yeah.
All right. So, Canada Grand Prix, it's done.
Yes.
What is your couple of sentences to summarize this Grand Prix?
Max is still invincible. Aston Martin made a pretty good jump. I think that's my 2 sentences, I think, yeah.
Good one. Mine would be good weather for the duck.
Yeah.
Cold in Canada. Surprising qualifying. Ferrari, good strategy. And, well, Max is invincible. I think we all have to agree now. Even a bird won't touch him.
Oh, it tried. Yeah, I mean, the season Max is having, only Max Verstappen could finish the race with a bird stuck in his brake duct, whilst George Russell can't even finish the race because they set the brakes up in such a way that they weren't expecting him to be in traffic, and being in traffic overheated his brakes and caused his retirement.
Yeah. I'm not sure I get that one, though.
No, well, I mean, I sort of get it. F1's all about like really fine margins, so small changes like that, like how open the brake ducts are, obviously good for cooling your brakes, but bad for aerodynamics and top speed.
Yeah, but it's Canada. The chance for safety car is pretty high. Weather was unpredictable. Setting it up not to be able to get into traffic, is that a little bit of a...
Well, the unpredictable weather would play in their favour in that instance, because the rain would help with keeping the cool brakes and the cooler temperatures that come with the rains and the slower speeds and the lighter braking that they'd be doing. So it does seem a little bit odd, but the biggest surprise out of all of that to do with George Russell was that he managed to survive that impact into the wall.
The Mercedes are strong cars. You can throw it around, you can bounce off the curbs, you can toss it into a wall, lose a wheel, doesn't matter. They drive. How
hard he hit that wall, and the fact that he managed to carry on the race is just unreal. I can't think of another instance like that recently. Such a heavy impact, at least. But yeah, ruined his race though.
Yeah, well, he ruined his own race because Max had the same incident where you hit the curb on the chicane. And then you launch yourself a little bit. But Max released everything and then steered in. So the car turned around, then hit the gas. Russell hit the gas and then tried to steer in, which of course is way too enthusiastic, I think. So I think it's also an error on the correction, if I'm quite honest.
Maybe, yeah.
So George is eager. And I have to admit, Lewis is on fire with consistency.
Yeah. The car's obviously still not up to speed for where Mercedes and Hamilton would want to be, but he's driving on. He's on very good form at the moment, definitely.
Yeah, I definitely agree as well. So, shall we start with qualifying first, James?
Yeah.
And then we'll go into the statements. But qualifying, I think Nico. We have to mention Nico here, right?
Yeah, that was unbelievable. Kind of lucky as well, the fact that he got his lap in just before the red flag went out.
But then decided to hit the pedal to the metal during the red flag.
Did he just miss the red flag for like the first
section, yeah.
A little bit of the flag being out or whatever, because he was just carried on at pretty much racing speed, didn't he, or something, and earned himself a penalty, which kind of it kind of ruined it a little bit. But then he was still like way up the grid compared to where you'd expect it has to be anyway. So even with the penalty, he was still in a really good position.
Still started 5th though.
Exactly, yeah.
So that was a good one. Then we had Fernando and Lewis, George, of course. Esteban doing another great qualifying.
Yeah.
So he's pretty much on form. Although today there was an article posted saying if it was an equal machinery, he would beat Max Verstappen.
I don't see that happening, but yeah.
He's definitely on form. What is with Formula 1 drivers lately that if they ever hit a good form, suddenly they think they can become the next world champion?
I don't know, but there's a lot more pieces to just a driver being on form to become a world champion. So, I don't know. I don't understand why they play these or make these kind of statements. What's even the point of it? Because we'll never know. So what's the point of saying it? But
true.
Yeah, he's on good form though. So confidence is probably just really high at the moment for him, and I suspect a big part of Ocon's confidence this season is the fact that Gasly's come into the team, and he is beating Gasly.
He is being Gasly. He's being the Red Bull Gasly.
Yeah. So he should take a lot of confidence from that, because Gasly's, other than his disappointing stint in a Red Bull seat, he's generally been beating his teammate. When he was at I want to say Toro Rosso.
Ocon, right?
AlphaTauri.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Gasly, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, Gasly,
yeah. The other one I want to discuss quickly is one I think should have got a way bigger penalty than he got. That's Carlos Sainz.
He should have got 2 penalties, really.
Yeah.
I know one of them, like, technically he left, like, a car's width just about, but
wow.
the way he was drifting across the track, like, the other driver had to take that into account, whether even if they had space, like, it looked like that space was very quickly disappearing or potentially going to disappear very quickly. So he should have received a penalty, I think, I can't remember who he blocked at the end of the packs, at the end of the straight. It was Gasly, was. Oh yeah, it was, because Gasly got very angry about that. Yeah, that's actually potentially what ruined Gasly's race, was the fact that he got knocked out in Q1 because his fast lap was destroyed by Carlos Sainz, who then gets to go on into Q3, which does seem a bit unfair. But
do you think they should give penalties faster in qualifying? Because they're all being investigated after the race. But I don't think it's fair getting, if you do something wrong like Sainz did twice in Q1, right? Should you be able to make Q3?
Well, it probably wouldn't matter, because he's probably fast enough to still make it into Q3, even if they kind of in advance apply a penalty and say, okay, well, they can't really, can they? Because if he say he finishes Q1 in, even if it's in 7th, like, that's not the grid, so you can't really apply his 2-3 place penalties or whatever it's going to be at that point.
You're right.
So whether I don't know how they do it. I feel like it needs to be a harsher penalty potentially, just because
it was so dangerous in the wet.
Well, it's very dangerous, and in a situation like that, like, he has completely destroyed Gasly's race before it's even started. And his 3-place penalty, it could have ruined his race. He could have got caught up in some sort of carnage in the first lap, or, further on. Like, basically, the further you are down the field at the start of the race, the more chance you have of getting involved in some sort of incident, isn't there? So it sort of hurts his race, but in the end didn't. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know how you fix that problem, but I think rather than looking at penalties for slowing cars down, they need to look at how cars are driving slowly on the track. And maybe they need to say, like, you can't go below a certain sector time or delta or whatever, or speed or something, so that the slow lap is still reasonably quick. And then if you apply that to everybody, everyone's at the same
But I don't get, right?
field there.
They're always slow on the same part of the track, right? Usually in the last third. So what I don't get is if you have to, especially in Canada, you just draw a line on the last section and say if you're slow traffic, you go on that part. You stay over that part. You cross the line and you're too slow or slower than this, penalty.
Yeah.
Period. Just track limits sort of in the slow lane. I know that they don't want, but it's so easy to maintain then. It's so easy to check, and it's so easy for everyone to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
There.
There's a lot of jockeying for position as well, though, isn't there? Because, I mean, that's the reason why they're all going so slow in that final sector. Any track, never mind Canada, is because they're trying to leave a gap to whoever's in front of them so that they're not having their lap disturbed by that car that's in front.
But then do as Max go out as first and just...
Well, not everyone can go out. Yeah, but not everyone can get out first.
No, but I mean, you can, like, you don't have to wait, right?
No, I know. But I suppose it depends what their plan is for qualifying and stuff like that. But I mean, in changeable conditions like we had this weekend, going out early probably always makes sense because there's always the chance of a red flag. So you want to get out and get at least some sort of time on the board in case something happens. And like in Q3, when something happened, by the time they got back out, the track was that much wetter that the track was slower. So all the laps that were achieved before the red flag were the ones that effectively made the grid. But it can work both ways, can't it? You could have the track drying and then really the fast laps happen in like the last minute of qualifying.
Yeah, true. Normally in dry conditions. Two more drivers I want to highlight, and then we go into those things, though. We have to highlight Alexander Albon, but I got a topic about him. So well done, but we'll talk about you soon. And then I have two drivers. That's Charles Leclerc and Sergio Perez. And this comes with statement number one, James. On the tricky circumstances, when the pressure's on, World Championship able drivers make it count the first lap. Other talented drivers, but are not World Championship material, are not able to do this consistently. We saw Max, we saw Alonso, we saw Lewis, we saw Norris and Albon pushing out amazing laps on the first attempts every single time.
Yeah.
Charles missed every single time the first lap. Well, normally he's actually good at qualifying, but it's a different circumstances. Checo, same thing. Lance, same thing. Yuki, same thing. Zoe, I don't know what he was doing, same thing. But Nico, well, he did it as well. So I think this really showed some of the exceptional drivers versus the good drivers disqualifying.
Yeah. I mean, Nico, we probably shouldn't be surprised about because he got pole position through conditions like this in a car that was not worthy
He's
of
been
pole
out
position.
qualifying his teammate every single race.
Yeah. But Leclerc, the biggest problem with Leclerc is Ferrari. And I think the biggest problem with Ferrari is that they don't listen to their drivers. Leclerc wanted slick tyres. He asked for them. And they said, well, Max has stayed out, so you should stay out. Why are Ferrari looking at what Max is doing? Why do they care what Max is doing? Like, I just don't understand what his engineer is doing and what they're saying. Like, if we kind of had it with Lewis a little bit, but I could understand the one with Lewis because Lewis said might be slicks, and they said no, it's raining too much in a certain sector. And that's fair dues because it was getting wetter, and actually the people who moved on to slicks at that time or after that time were in fact slower. So, but Leclerc didn't even do his hot lap. He was still on his out lap, and he's saying, "No, let's just come back in and get slicks on." Now, there were lap times in, this was in
Q3.
No, it's
Two.
Q2.
It's Q2. Sorry, yes.
There were lap times in Q2 that were achieved on intermediate tyres and did make it into Q3. Lewis Hamilton is one of them. So the tyre's not entirely an excuse. He could have, should have, done a faster lap on those intermediates to try and get into Q3. But his team screwed him by forcing him to stay out on the intermediates when he wanted to be on slicks. And I don't know why they're not trusting the driver. Like other drivers were out on slicks. It was obviously at that kind of that knife edge where it's like, well, either could work. Driver decides what they feel comfortable on. And
driver should always decide, right? Especially in
qualifying. In those conditions, absolutely, I think so. Yeah, because
you can blame the driver, but now the driver can blame the team, which is always worse.
Yeah, but the driver is actually out there on the track and can see the conditions themselves and get a feel for them. The team's just looking at the TV. They've probably got people stationed around the track that are keeping an eye on the weather. And they can look at the times that other people are doing, but that's also part of my argument is that there were other drivers that were out on slicks. So there were teams and drivers that felt like slicks were an option at that point. And the track at that time was only getting drier because it was like start of Q2 was wet or damp, and it was the rain had eased off and it was slightly drying. And then it was later on into Q2 when it started raining again and then got wetter again. So there was like this 2 or 3 or 4 minute window that was like perfect for soft tyres. And people like, yeah, exactly. People like Albon absolutely nailed it. And Ferrari could have done,
but I think that's also the risk, right? So Albon nailed it, but Albon can take a risk. If he fails, still 15, still good. If he hits it, it goes into Q3, and he's a hero.
But Ferrari, I feel like Ferrari are in that position as well.
Yeah, but like Max said it on Inters, right?
Yeah.
So he was like, I have to be safe. It'll probably be enough for like getting it. Was enough. So, and I think that's where the Ferrari decision making came into place. Like, Albon is taking a risk. Max isn't taking a risk. We probably don't have to take a risk here. And that's why I'm sort of also blaming Leclerc, because if he's very sure about the fact he needs slicks, he just has to come in and say, now put those damn slicks on, I'll show you. And if he's not sure, right, if the team's so sure, he should just set a lap on them and at least try it. And he didn't. Neither of those options happened. So the doubt between him and I think it's Xavier, is his engineer.
Yeah,
it just keeps coming back during the race, after the race, in qualifying, during Monaco. It's insane. And we'll talk about Ferrari in a moment, but those they did really well in the race suddenly, which is weird enough. But that's where I'm like, okay, like Verstappen and I forgot his name. I'm sorry. They have arguments, but they sort of compromise and do something. At least they do something. In the Ferrari situation, they don't do anything. That's my point. They're both like, no, this is my point. This is your point. Okay, let's argue. Okay, but now I'm on the Inters. I'm not actually going to do much with.
Yeah.
So I think that's where I'm like, it's not world championship material, because you're not fighting for your own opinion there. And that's why I appreciate Sainz a little bit more, although we both are very much of the opinion that he's not on the natural talented level as Charles is, right?
Yeah.
But that's also where my biggest disappointment, and I know I sound like I hate Checo, that's absolutely not true, but it's such a waste. You can't, this is his third. You said Max has qualified more pole positions than Checo made Q1 or Q3s?
Yeah.
That's...
I know, it's ridiculous. We don't want to.
We talk
about
this
about Leclerc, but the thing
it's the same argument. Both drivers are said to be world championship material, or at least say they are world championship material themselves. They actually both have cars that are able to compete at least. I think Checo has a car that's able to win. And Ferrari showed that car actually isn't so bad once they figure things out. And they're not getting the maximum out of their performances. And not once. It's not unlucky or anything, but it's just week in, week out these days.
For Ferrari, I mean...
Checo as well, right?
Well, yeah, Checo's just... I don't know what's happened with him. His confidence his confidence is gone at the moment. He's making silly mistakes when he's racing. He's not fast, but then he's not. Look at like last year, like he often was finishing 6th out of the top 6 drivers, which he shouldn't have been. When you look at Max and what the Red Bull's capable of in his hands, because that's all you can ever do when you're looking at a car is comparing between the two teammates. But I mean, we all know Perez is not on Max Verstappen's level, but certainly this year, more so than last year. Yeah, like that. The Red Bull this year has no weaknesses. I mean, it can be.
We'll see that in Austria, though. Normally, that's not a Red Bull track, right?
I think it will be this year. I really don't see any track that Red Bull won't win at. Certainly Max won't win at. Like there's always going to be the risk of mechanical failures or some sort of bad timing with a safety car or a red flag or just an accident or, weather. There's always something that can happen. So you can't just guarantee a win for somebody. But I feel like Max is odds-on favourite to win. Like going into any race this season, you just think, well, Max is going to win it. He should win it. He probably will win it. And I think the only way he doesn't is not even through a fault of his own, because I think he's that far up the road that he could afford to probably spin it like he did at Hungary last year. Like, he'd be fine. It's if something catastrophic happens to his car or race. That's the only way he's anyway. But then you look at Perez,
really fumbling. He
was nowhere again this race. Like even when I can't remember what position he started in. He was outside the top 10, wasn't he?
He started on 12th.
Yeah, and he kind of cut through some of the sort of back end of the midfield.
More of strategy, honestly, because I don't think he actually overtook anyone. He was just sticking behind Leclerc and Sainz. He started 12th, Leclerc and Sainz 10th and 11th, of course.
Yeah.
And I think he just kept following him. He definitely had the same strategy as well.
He definitely overtook Sainz at one point, because Sainz overtook him and he got him back.
Yeah.
Other than that, I guess Albon maybe on track. I can't remember who else he might have passed. But did he do it? Sergio did a one stop, didn't he? No, he stopped again for softs at the end.
Yeah, because he did.
For the fastest lap.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't feel like it's good enough. Like when you compare the pace of the Red Bull versus the Ferraris most races, he should be beating the Red Bulls. He should be beating the Ferraris in that Red Bull. So
at least fight with the Austin.
Yeah. Well, I feel like Lewis and Fernando were too far up the road for that to happen, probably. But and he was just way off as well. Like it wasn't like he was anywhere near the Ferraris. He was significantly behind them. I just don't understand it.
Well, let's knock it off. Let's not beat Perez while he's down. I think we both agree that should be better. But that brings us to the next topic.
Yeah.
Alex Albon should return to Red Bull and take Perez's seat.
I mean, he's having a better season and he is probably a better driver for that seat. But can they? How would they? Because this isn't like swapping drivers in...
Check it to Williams. No problem, right?
Would Williams want him?
Oh, why not?
I don't see Williams agreeing.
He's not a bad driver, right? And he's better than...
No, but
he's better than Sargent. I think Sargent needs to replace this.
Yeah, but he's not as good as Albon. I don't think at this point.
No,
And
but I think he is on property on Red Bull still, right?
Maybe, but he's still. It's not like. I keep wanting to call them Toro Rosso. It's not like AlphaTauri.
Yes.
Where they're, same parent company, the drivers are all part of the same Red Bull family, and they can negotiate, in quotes, a swap.
All right, scratch this. Alex Albon is under contract with Williams.
Exactly.
So,
and I know he's still got like Red Bull sponsorship or whatever.
nope. Red Bull ends the sponsorship for as well. So,
oh, that's been dropped, has it?
yes.
In
August
it must
22.
have been last year, right? Okay. So, but I just think, even if it was feasible, why would Williams want Perez over Albon? Because also after a swap, Perez's confidence is knocked even more. He's probably even slower. He's probably not going to deliver the results that Albon's delivering.
Okay,
so.
new one.
Yeah.
Daniel Rick should replace Perez.
That I would love to see. But I don't know about the comparison with Daniel Ricciardo, actually, but apparently the reason why they're not trying to fast-track anyone else and swap Perez, or potentially, maybe this is just a rumour, I don't know, but Perez is beating everyone else in the sim. So he's still fast in the sim. But
yeah, no pressure. That's easy.
Well, it's different, yeah, exactly.
I think that's where the issue of Perez mostly come in these days. It's whenever there's pressure on, he just collapses. And the only time he actually beat Max on merit was in Baku, I think. But to be quite honest, Max pitted because people forgot that Max pitted and then the safety car came out. So I think that will cause him the win. And
there's Jeddah as well,
right?
wasn't there? Wasn't there Jeddah? I mean, I know Max started
Jeddah,
a little bit down the field, but there was a point where...
And the other race, Max started in 15th or something and still came second. So those were the races he won. Well, it's not like he has anything on him. And it's not like a small gap in qualifying either, right? Last week was 7th, 10th. This week was a second in the rain.
Yeah.
That's like huge because the whole midfield, we have to say something about midfield, but these boys are close now. Like 3rd to 10th is 5th of 10th, 4 tenths, something like that. So on normal circumstances, that's really well done. But I think the way I wanted to highlight Albon is because he's been in shape. He has been cool in interviews. He's been doing tremendous work on Williams, though. And I said at the start of the year, I don't believe in Sargent. I think that one I can safe to say I still don't believe in Sargent. He had another woeful weekend, but but it doesn't help if you have to drive next to Albon in this form.
No. Albon's, actually, Albon's showing people up in the Williams a bit like Russell did, actually. I mean, Russell's not having a great run in this season, I'd say, overall so far. But yeah, Albon, he is worthy of a better seat than that Williams, and he's dragging that Williams to positions at the end of the race. I was going to say on the grid that it maybe shouldn't be reaching in somebody else's hands, or wouldn't be reaching in somebody else's hands. He's defending for the last, I don't know how many laps it was.
Yeah, at least 15 laps or something. Yeah.
Like, it felt like a significant portion of the race. He was defending like crazy. From Ocon as well, who, he's on great form. He's qualified well ahead of him.
He did smart though, like using all the battery on these straights.
Oh yeah,
and it's a fast car.
And he was doing classic. I always associate it with motorbike racing because I used to see it like motorbike racing where they do what they'd call like a block pass, which is where you'd like, well, he's not doing the passing, but he's doing the block aspect of it, where you, in motorcycle racing, like someone would overtake somebody, but then they would hold them right up and slow them right down on the apex, and then rely on acceleration out of the corner and disrupting their rhythm to maintain that position out the corner. And that's kind of what Albon seemed to be doing during the race. He was like going significantly slower on the apexes than probably the car behind is capable of.
Yeah.
But then using his speed on the straights to just keep them behind him. It was just great tactical driving.
That's the same as we saw the Vries do last year, right?
Yeah.
And also no Williams, so well done. No, seriously, all credits to Alex Albon. Really well done. Great race, great end result as well. James, now I've got 1 out of 2 topics, and I'll let you decide which you want to discuss today.
All right.
Do we want to talk about a superb Ferrari strategy after winning Le Mans, and I'm telling everyone that they should maybe get the Le Mans team in to do the strategy, suddenly they make a perfect race? Or do we want to talk about how certain Lando Norris did some unsportsmanship behavior and explain that one?
I'd rather talk about Ferrari. I think I'll quickly cover the Norris thing because I think it's ridiculous and stupid.
From Norris, right?
Yeah, from Norris, 100%.
Quickly explain, because I saw a lot of people asking what's going on here.
So, this was under the safety... No, was it a safety car?
Yes, sir. Virtual safety car.
Virtual safety car, that was it. I was going to say there wasn't a full safety car. During the VSC, so you've got to drive to a specific speed, but it's not just a dedicated top speed, it's a dedicated minimum speed as well. So you have a very tight window of time to complete mini sectors throughout the lap. So your lap should always be pretty much the same, and it's the same for everybody. And what often happens when there's a safety car or a virtual safety car or anything like this where everyone's going slower is everyone wants to get in the pits and change tyres because it's a cheap pit stop. Because whilst you're doing whatever the speed limit is down the pit lane and taking 20 seconds out of your race to do a pit stop, everyone else down the pit straight is going a lot slower than racing speed compared to during a normal racing lap. So a pit stop becomes cheap time-wise. And McLaren want to pit both their drivers. Lando's going to lose some time in the pits because he's going to end up double stacked behind his teammate. So he drives a little bit slower coming into the pits, which backs up people behind him, just to try and get into the pits, get his tyre changed without having to wait for anything that's happening to Piastri. Now, drivers do this all the time and never get away with it. And
no, literally never, ever, ever.
It's so easy to spot on their timings, and you're a guarantee that whoever is behind Lando when he starts slowing down, they're looking at their delta time on their dash on their steering wheel, and they're screaming down the radio saying, he's going slower than he should be because I'm losing time on my delta as well now. It's slam dunk. As soon as that gets registered, it's a penalty. There is no avoiding it. And he's taken a 5-second penalty for the sake of probably losing 2 or 3 seconds in the pits. So it's a net loss. And to be honest, I think 5 seconds maybe isn't a big enough penalty for this.
That was what we were talking about, yeah?
Because there probably are situations where you can gain more than 5 seconds through doing this.
Exactly. He could have gone 9, though, if he didn't get the penalty. So
yeah, he would have done, yeah.
They threw away some points as well. The thing was really bothering me, him saying, I don't know what I did wrong. And during the race saying, what's the penalty all about? Where the pits told him, we'll talk about it after the race. No, tell me about it now. What did I do wrong? He damn knew. He absolutely knew.
There's no way he didn't. Yeah.
So that was one thing that was on me. But I think that was a clear-cut penalty, like you say, a slam dunk. But again, for the other people that aren't in depth and watching timings and know this, please explain it a little bit better. I think that's...
Yeah.
Because
unsporting is 100% fair analysis for this.
Yes.
But it needs a better description. It needs to be unsporting,
You can have an animation ready for this because it happens so often. Just like a 10-second animation was this is what we don't want to have. This is what happened. Okay, done.
Yeah.
Anyways, Ferrari. I don't wear a hat, but else I would take my hat off.
I thought they'd absolutely screwed it when they didn't go into the pits during the virtual safety car window like everybody else did, and they just stayed out for track position. And I thought, there's no way they're going to make up enough time to get a pit stop in off the back of this. And I can't decide if Ferrari played a masterclass strategy or if they were just lucky. Because everyone seemed to think it was going to be a one-stop race, and then it wasn't a one-stop race. Apart from
many it was, though. So.
Well, Ferrari obviously didn't, but a lot of the people that stopped and would potentially be involved in Ferrari's race after they'd gained track position needed to stop again. So they were kind of, by skipping a stop and then planning a one-stop strategy, they kind of ended up falling in line with everyone else around them. And yeah, just had a great race out of seemingly nowhere. It was bizarre to watch it unfold.
And communication, they are not going to attack you, they said to Charles. And they kept driving the same laps. And all we ever heard was one time Carlos saying, I think I'm faster. And then they say, yes, but we're not overtaken. Like, oh, that was so that was a pretty clear-cut communication right there.
Yeah. And to be fair, there was no need for them to be fighting at that point either, because really they just needed to focus on, like you said, just banging in the lap times.
They need points. They need points because they can't be beaten by Mercedes. And
finishing fourth would be a disaster in the championship for Ferrari. Yeah.
So if they get 2 points in the top 5, they should just take it now, I think.
Yeah. The saving grace for them is the fact that Aston Martin's only been driven by one driver, because Lance Stroll's not really scoring any points.
Oh, so is Red Bull.
I mean, he's got a point, but he's never going to finish above the Ferraris, I wouldn't say.
No.
So,
but Red Bull is also being pushed by one driver.
Well, yeah.
But that's no fighting.
They're not in a fight with Red Bull, so.
Exactly. James, I like to say I would give this race a proper 6.5 out of 10. Yeah,
I'd go a little bit lower. It's a 5 or 6. I mean, there was some good racing at times, but there was stretches of the race that were a little bit boring. There was way too much DRS train stuff where cars are stuck behind cars that are stuck behind cars, and you've got like 4 or 5 of them sort of bunched up together, like spread out over, say, 3 seconds.
We could use a little bit of rain.
Do anything.
But we didn't have Russell on track anymore to say, is there rain coming or is it sweat from my helmet?
Oh, yeah.
So
he should have been sweating after that.
What a crash. Did you see that when Russell crashed, he brought his car in, and when he pulled into his in the pit lane, he actually lost his right wheel, and that just jumped through the pit lane, and a Ferrari mechanic picked up the tire and brought it back to Mercedes.
I did not see that, no.
We'll definitely, we'll have to share that link. That was an amazing view.
Yeah.
Like Ferrari was like, free tires, where did these come from? Oh, these were from George. But he actually broke the whole rim of the car, which was insane. The tire actually stood up. So I have to, for someone who's actually driven a Mercedes and was in a car crash as well, and came out pretty much unharmed, while everything else around him was collapsed. Mercedes are really good when you are in a crash. So
yeah, apparently so.
Experience in this one. James, we're gonna talk about Austria next week. Just some housekeeping. In the coming weeks, we'll of course have also summer breaks, holidays, weekends away. So our schedule will be a little bit chaotic, and we might actually miss a race somewhere down the line. Because where I'm coming, I figured out they had some Wi-Fi and we should be able to record. But the Wi-Fi doesn't go about 1 Mbps a second, which is definitely not enough. Well, maybe enough to record, but definitely not enough to actually produce a show.
No.
Because if I start uploading it, then it's the end of the season before it gets done. So we'll inform you all about that. Just keep an eye on Twitter, which is at F1 in Focus Pod, and we'll post the schedules there. Next week, we'll talk about our expectations of the Austria Grand Prix, but we are going to introduce a new topic. Last time, we introduced driving a blind track or lap around the track, which we'll discuss. So next week, I'll do a blind lap around Austria. But with the arrival of the new Formula One game, F123, we are not sponsored, by the way. We actually had to buy this game. Thank you, EA Sports. But hey,
if they want to sponsor us, though.
Yeah, well, that's too late now. But maybe next year. But we're talking. Well, so we're doing the blind track.
Doing the blind lap. We talked about because of Formula One.
Yes,
2023,
and because of the new game. What we also will doing is we are both having a sim. We're both having the game now, and what we'll do is we'll do a time trial during the week. You can put as many laps as you want. And when we do the pre-show or the post-show after, like next week, we'll discuss everything about Austria. What we will do is we'll be showing the laps while we talk about it, and we'll see who's the faster Formula One driver. Because our predictions, well, we're just going to bet on Max and Alonso getting first and second. So this will always stay. I don't think it gets very exciting. Yeah. So we're going to get points for the one. If you win the time trial, you get a point. And at the end of the season, we'll see who's the better sim driver. So also... Let's make it a little more interesting. And if you watch it on the YouTube version or the Spotify video version, you can then also see both laps. And I'll try to make it so that we can see it at the same time so you can easily compare it while we're talking about everything else.
Cool, yeah.
So go practice, because I think you were very annoyed by yourself already after one attempt.
Yeah, I bought a steering wheel stand for this now because I have it hooked up to my desk and then my pedals are just sat on the floor. They're not secure in any way and they're moving around. So it's like, time trial's not too bad because I can probably go about 3 or 4 laps before they move to the point where I need to readjust them. So I could just pause it or whatever. But I wouldn't be able to do any kind of like proper racing or anything as it is now. So I can't really fully enjoy the game. I'd like to get into career mode or something and have a go. I'm not too fussed about is it Breaking Point it's called?
It's pretty fun actually. But hey.
Story mode thing. I'm not too fussed about that if I'm being honest, but just racing like a career mode or even just, the Grand Prix mode, pick a driver and do a season, something like that.
We should do a career together.
Yeah, we should,
the same team, but same car. Then you can say you're that York-based YouTuber / podcaster that beat John on the Equal Machinery.
Yeah. Once I've got my stand there, because like I say, I can't do more than like 4 or 5 laps before I'm having to readjust my seat and my pedals.
I have a great excuse already as well, though.
Oh yeah,
the game's a bit unfinished, to put it mildly. And I have the sim, and part of my wheelbase is just in front of the actual screen, right? Which normally isn't an issue because you can set your on-screen displays. You can raise and put all the numbers in different positions so you can always see it. That's bugged, so I can't actually see how fast I'm driving and in which gear I'm at, which is pretty annoying in time trial if you don't know how fast you're going. But nevertheless, so far I'm faster, but we still have more than a week to go and practice.
Well, you were faster.
Oh, tune in next week to find out what the difference is.
Yeah.
But that's a new topic for next week. I'll do a blind lap around Austria for everyone, and we'll put up both of our time trial best times and compare that to ourselves. That way we can also explain the track a little bit easier afterwards and talk about the most interesting thing about the track.
Yeah.
Right. So that also next week are predictions. And I don't have anything else left to say. Do you have anything left to say?
Just see you next time.
See you next time.